Good afternoon. I am live, and today I want to talk about something that happened last year in the Conejo Valley School District Board of Education. This is from my neck of the woods. Last year, the Conejo Valley Unified School District Board of Education approved something called Teen Talk, a sex ed curriculum. And even if you don't live in my neck of the woods, you might recognize what I'm going to be talking about because there's there's a lot of controversy that has ensued surrounding it. And I just realized that my mic isn't plugged in, so let's plug that in. This is probably going to be better for us because I don't want to miss this. This is a really important topic of conversation. What's being passed and in the school boards, but also what's being taught to our students. And so when when passed, this curriculum, Teen Talk, a sexual education curriculum, was touted as a big step forward in the education of our public school children. The unanimous decision was controversial from the beginning and has only sparked more controversy due to the curriculum's normalization of what I'll categorize as questionable sexual ethics, including teen abortion, the use of sex toys, same-sex sex, and a lot of gender ideology tied in. And we're going to take a critical look at what's being taught to our public school children as young as 8 years old. By the way, it starts in kindergarten. And at the end of our time, it's my goal that we have a better understanding of exactly what's being taught our youth, but not only an understanding of what's being taught, but how we should respond as ambassadors of Christ to this. That's what we do every other week here on To the Point. I'm Jon Noyes, and I want to make sure that you guys comment in the comment section, because at the end of about 10 or 15 minutes of commentary, I'd love to roll through them, those comments, and answer any questions that you might have. And I want to give you guys a warning up front. This content is PG-13 minimum, maybe goes into the R rating, because I am going to talk about what's in this curriculum, and I'm going to use words that might not be appropriate for younger viewers. So I want to make sure that you are aware of that right now up front. I will say that there's nothing that I'm going to say that I haven't and I wouldn't say to my 12, 10, or 9-year-old, just so you guys can gauge it. But that depends on how you're choosing to educate your young ones. So I live in Ventura County, and up until last year, I lived in the district where this curriculum is now being taught. In the Conejo Valley is where I used to live. I live just slightly north of that, in the coastal plain of Camarillo. And so, anyways, I've attended personally school board meetings in that district in the past, and I've heard personally some of the open debate expressed by the commentary and the community on this topic. And now, with this in mind, I want to say up front that I don't want you to tune me out thinking that this is just local news, because I think if it's happening here in my little corner of the world, it's probably happening in your little corner as well, at least incrementally creeping in. So let's dive in here. The Teen Talk curriculum, which I'm linking to here a little bit later, Harmony will put some links up, and you can go and you can review the curriculum for yourself. It was approved in part to comply with the 2016. It's called the 2016 California Healthy Youth Act. It's a state law that requires districts to provide sexual education to students in 7th through 12th grade. Now, I say this, but the schools can actually provide instruction much earlier than 7th grade, and it is happening, even, like I said at the onset, even as young and as early as kindergarten. The law here requires that our public schools provide, and I quote, a comprehensive, accurate, and unbiased sexual education instruction that recognizes gender expression, and different sexual orientations. And there are two main issues that we have to talk about today. The first is what does Teen Talk, the sexual education curriculum, teach? The second issue is what's the role of the government and government schools in particular in our culture, in our society, in our lives. So let's look at the first issue first. What does the curriculum teach? So the Ventura County Star, the VC Star, it's my local newspaper. It reported concerns with Teen Talk, and it says that the concern is over basically that there's indoctrination happening, the indoctrination of kids, and in response to these types of concerns, where you hear whether or not this is indoctrination or not. The major media outlets, at least in my area, and now nationally, as things like the Daily Wire and larger news outlets have started reporting on some of the incidents, which we're going to get into. The way that they're responding to these concerns, and as the board pushes back at them, they're going to say that they're based on misinformation. News reports in general have been dismissive of most of the concerns that I'm going to raise. I have local newspapers here. There's a couple that I read: Acorn, VC Star, and The Guardian are all my local newspapers. Now, The Guardian's a little bit more conservative. But the other two are your run-of-the-mill mainstream type media outlets. And I just need to start with saying that I've reviewed personally the 429-page document for myself. It's linked to, like I said, it will be linked to in the comments section here. And there's a lot of information, and actually there's a lot of helpful information. For example, the information on kind of halfway through the material on body image is decent. There are some good takeaways in the section on mental health towards the end of the curriculum as well, including what I really appreciated, a direct attempt to take away the stigma of issues having to do with mental health and kind of open up the lines of conversation, which I think need to happen. After all, I've been dealing with suicide for a long time now as a topic of what I'm speaking on publicly out in the world. And the curriculum also lists some really good resources in there. Unfortunately, ultimately the curriculum fails, as it offers mostly naturalistic answers to the hard questions and feelings the kids are struggling with in the culture today. And I was surprised, so I got to say, I was surprised that there's a mentioning of spirituality. But it comes in the form of Native American land worship. It actually discusses Native American land worship right at the very beginning of the curriculum, which I thought was interesting, but it doesn't offer any truth, and then from there, just Teen Talk gets worse and worse. By offering, for example, to mental health issues, offering masturbation and having sex as acceptable ways to deal with feelings of anger, jealousy, depression, guilt, shame, and the list goes on. And you might ask, like, why is this wrong? Why is offering sexual answers to these types of problems wrong? And I think that's a legitimate question. It's not so much that it doesn't work. I mean, sex is a great distraction. Right. The curriculum points out several things that help distract us from the hard things of life, but these distractions aren't solutions. You don't deal with life's challenges in this way, especially via sex and masturbation. Masturbation, for example, it merely turns you further inward towards yourself. It's and how destructive for a teen struggling with things like depression, jealousy, and anger, and other things to turn them in more inward to themselves. This doesn't help teach students how to deal with their stresses. And in fact, we've actually experienced an example of the logical outworking of the normalization of sex as therapy kind of mentality. A student here in my district just recently masturbated at school in front of his class here in Ventura County. My little sleepy town or county, we have young students, I believe it was a 7th grader, doing this, and it's gained national attention. Again, the Daily Wire has picked this up, and the superintendent of schools in that district has actually come out in defense of that boy. And I'm going to let you guys pursue that story. I'll provide a link to these articles. I see Harmony's hopped on board. So the public schools are teaching sex as a drug, a solution to problems, a way to numb the pain, a commodity. And what of your partner? a means to an end, a temporary relief from pain, a distraction, an object, and maybe a quick fix, not a human being, not a person of infinite value and worth, but as a piece of meat ultimately. And before the discussions on mental health and body image, Teen Talk advocates for things like the use of the Plan B pill as contraception. Now, this is a contradiction. A contraceptive prevents pregnancy. Plan B it ends a pregnancy. And I want to be clear here. I'm not advocating or I'm not supporting an anti-contraception view. I'm anti-murder, as we've discussed a ton here on To the Point. In the curriculum, there are detailed drawings of male and female genitalia, and I don't necessarily even have a problem with that. But then there's explicit instructions on how to have sex, and this includes detailed instructions on how to have anal sex with fingers, penises, toys, how to have gay sex, how to pursue these types of relationships. And friends, this is not, if you haven't caught on already, this is not your normal sex education program. This is not what us older folks, I can't believe I'm saying that, but this us older folks think of when we talk about sex ed in schools. This is teaching on sexuality, not just sex, and there's a huge difference. An article in a local newspaper that I just read says their agenda, the school's agenda, the school board, their agenda, which ignores widespread opposition, apparently includes the normalization of gross public sexuality among middle school and grade school students. And having reviewed the curriculum myself, I can say that it does. And I don't have the time to, or really the desire to go into any more detail. However, after reviewing the entire curriculum, I can say it's pornographic. It seeks the normalization of sexual behavior in general, and more specifically, masturbation, homosexuality, homosexual sex, transgenderism, and the use of sex toys. No one can say I've based this conclusion on misinformation, by the way, because before I read any article, I read the curriculum. I've come to this conclusion from the source itself, and it's surprising. I won't say it's shocking. We'll get to that in a second, because I don't think it should surprise us. We've come to view human beings as the product of blind physical forces, of the process of evolution, and as a consequence, our body is a result of blind physical forces of evolution, and they carry with them no value outside of maybe any value that we might want to arbitrarily give to our bodies. And that means things that we do with our bodies, we can do whatever we want with them, including engaging in dangerous and damaging sexual behavior, because there's no ultimate purpose even in the act of sex. And I've talked about this before here on To the Point, and actually I just recently wrote a blog article about this at str.org that you can go to. It came out, I think, yesterday or the day before. And for more information, what's happened is we've relativized sexual ethics. It's all a matter of personal opinion, and even the curriculum, they provide a portion of "Am I ready for sex?" It's a part of the Teen Talk curriculum, and it's so clear that it's relativized. When you're ready for sex, even there's no clear indicator. It's all a matter of personal feelings, and it's devoid of any purpose. But sex has a purpose. And that purpose is deeper than just personal pleasure. It's been designed just as we've been designed. There's a telos, and that's perhaps what makes this curriculum, I think, even more dangerous. And that's what makes this curriculum unacceptable. It's that simple. But there's more here. Our second question is what's the role of the public school? What's the role of the government in schooling our youth? Why is the government schools teaching our children about sex in the first place? This has always been controversial, by the way. I mean, even if you're a child of the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, this has always been controversial, but things have shifted. It's become more and more acceptable for the schools to take on more and more responsibility to teach our children about these types of things. And this is kind of my point here is if you see this issue, and you're upset by it, or it surprises you, I don't think you've been paying attention. I'm not talking about like the teaching of, by the way, sexual biology. The sexual biology can be taught in a morally like neutral way, I'm talking about sexual ethics. And then what's happened is we've incrementally handed parental responsibility over to the government, and totalitarian has crept in the door. If you listen to Greg's podcast, he's talked about this. He actually, on today's podcast, he talks about it, and in the context of actually this issue. And yesterday, I think he talked about it. I didn't listen to yesterday's. I listened to the first 20 minutes of today's. I highly recommend that you go and listen to it. So totalitarianism is a system of government that's centralized, and it's dictatorial. You do what I say is what the government says. Totalitarian government requires subservience, and so you have to be subservient to the government, to Caesar, and this is what we're seeing here. Indoctrination, guys, is the right word. The officials, the school board might want to deny that and say it's based on misinformation, but it's not. Indoctrination is the right word. You see, the purpose of public education has changed over the last 200 years in this country, and fundamentally, the public school system has been meant to come alongside parents and teach young citizens to think critically, solve problems, communicate effectively, express creativity, and ultimately pursue truth. And then all with the purpose of helping to create a well-rounded citizen who can then participate in the democracy and be a valuable part of society. But this is not what's happening here. Instead, most public schools, and I know this from just being in my neck of the woods, but maybe in yours too, I think that you can probably relate. Most public schools, in large part, have become indoctrination centers, teaching students what to think, not how to think, and in the process, abandoning the pursuit of truth for the pursuit of an ideology. And this is not the purpose of the public school system. It's not the public school's responsibility to teach your children about sexuality in this way and sexual ethics in this way. That's the parents' responsibility. I'm open to disagreement on these things, by the way. You don't need to agree with me on my view of sexuality, but you don't teach our children according to one way. That's my job. I think many of us have handed over too easily that responsibility to the government. In fact, I think we've handed the education of our kids in general too easily over to the state, and now we're seeing the results of that. You see, our public school system has become a way for the government to indoctrinate our children according to what Greg calls in his podcast from this morning a highly divisive point of view regarding sexuality. This is not the job of the public education system. And it's not right. And again, I have to say this because I feel like a lot of us have when I say this isn't right, we put it in the upper story of reality, as Francis Schaeffer would say, the upper story being that of it's moral relativism. It's not true in an objective sense. I say this not though in a subjective sense. It's hurting the children, and it's hurting our society. I mean, it's not good for the culture objectively to be doing this. And for more on that, again, I just point you to some of my most recent blogs, and also various to the points. So how do we respond? I've gone long. How do we respond? One of the first things that we got to do, guys, is we have to review the curriculum ourselves. We have to stop relying on other people's assessment, and including mine, including Greg's, and including the Guardian or any other newspaper, or the major national outlets that you guys might look at. I've provided the link to this curriculum. Take the responsibility for being informed about what's happening in your children's classrooms. Visit the classroom personally. Spend time there. My kids go to a small classical Christian school in my area. I serve on the school board there. I've still taken days off work and sat in their classroom all day just to try to see what's going on. And I understand that this comes at a sacrifice. I understand some of you guys listening or watching it, you might not think it's possible. It might come at sacrificing a vacation day to do it, or maybe you have to take an unpaid day off. But if you have questions about what your teachers are teaching your students, you have to go see it for yourself. You need to take responsibility for that. The next thing is to speak up. So first, know what they're teaching. The second thing is speak up. Take the information that you've learned and speak up about the issues in a way that's winsome and effective. Don't be that jerk that's yelling into the microphone. I have a tendency to be that guy. I'm big and I'm passionate, and I just want to get into the issue. but formulate a response that's respectful but to the point, and push back hard. You see, the government and schools are servants to you, not the other way around. So but first you got to make sure you're informed and notified about what's being taught to your children. You got to be asking the teachers and the administration hard questions, and don't settle for answers that don't satisfy. Which means the first reason is so important, right? Know what they're teaching and then press into it and ask hard questions. And finally, guys, exercise your options to have your children excused from the teen talk curriculum and things like it. Parents do have rights, okay? In context of public schools, parents do have rights, and you should know what those rights are. And one of those rights is to opt your children out of controversial teachings. But this is where the teen talk stuff gets interesting, and where, if you read what's happening in the Conejo Valley, at least where I live, the schools actually there's a back door to this. The schools aren't necessarily required to seek the consent of students, parents, or guardians to teach this material. That's why the first two things, again, that I mentioned are so important. And my fourth step, and I'm going to take it a step further, guys. I recommend whatever you can do to take your child out of the public school system. I know this is easier said than done, but the way I see it, it's the only way things are going to change. I wish I could say that I think voting changes the system, or participation in the school board meetings. I think that these are ways to change things, but I think ultimately you got to hit them where it hurts most. And uh, your children are viewed honestly as dollar signs. So when we take our students out of the public school, the government schools lose money. And if we were to have a mass exodus from people who are actually concerned about their children's education from the school system, they'd be forced to review and alter the curriculum and the things that are being changed to our students. I firmly believe, and this is my opinion. Again, I'm open to critique. I'm open to pushback. I firmly believe that the government schools, the public school system, is an indoctrination system. That's what it's become. It hasn't always been, but it is now, and the time has come that we need to push back by taking our children out of that. And I know that that's not easy for people. Trust me, I know. My wife and I, we've sacrificed quite a bit. We've started homeschooling my oldest daughter this year. She's 12, 7th grade, because we want to have control over what my daughter's teaching and learning, and it's come at a big sacrifice for us. A decrease in pay and stuff like this. So if you're able to, that's what I recommend. So guys, this is what we've been looking at. We've been looking at the teen talk sexual education curriculum here on To the Point. I'm going to review your comments and see if there are any questions or concerns that you guys might have for me. And so let's do that. I'm going to look down here because my camera's here, my notes and stuff are down here. So I'm going to scroll through and see what we got. I'm going to go back up to the top and take the first, but I'm not seeing a ton. Isaac, man, it's good to see you from Oregon, USA. Yeah, I'm going to be leaving not that far north. Wait, Washington. Yeah, I'm going to be in Washington, which is further. I'm going to be up in the Seattle area later this week. How's it going? New Reformation, man. Good to see you here. Thanks always for tuning in. You said I'm not doing it, but even if I was, it's okay. That seems to be the way that those chop shops deal with criticism. I'm not doing it, but even if I was, it's okay. I'm not sure what that's in relation to, but anyways, New Reformation, you always have good content to provide. Wow, lots of links. Harmony, man, I overwhelmed you with links this time. And let's see here. If you got any comments, feel free to add them, guys. Unfortunately, I see this as seeding the next generation to accept and depend on sex work. We need to protect the children from this thing, from the things they can't possibly understand at their age. And that's kind of like what this, I'm not opposed to having controversial discussions. Like, I want my kids to be tested, and I want their worldview to be tested. Excuse me. And I want their worldview to be tested. But at age appropriate levels. There's no reason to be teaching a kindergartner about hormones and sexual development. There's just not. But that's what's happening. There's no reason to be talking about these things to our kids unless there's an agenda behind what's happening, and that's what I firmly believe. I believe that the government is seeking to influence our children away from us. By the way, away from us. So that's a good point. Um, and being dependent on sex work actually is an interesting. My wife and I had the kind of a conversation about this with actually our children. Oh man, how did it happen? It was about prostitution, and I can't remember. It was centered around a movie or so. Oh man, I can't remember. It was just yesterday, and I can't remember it. That's getting old here. I feel like it, at least today. But these things are becoming more and more acceptable, and when we're teaching our children in order how to cope with the challenges of life by turning inward and to masturbation and stuff like this, and then also to pursuing sexual activity. Like, what about the consequences of pursuing sex? And we're seeing the results of this. Things aren't getting better, by the way. As we're teaching our kids these coping mechanisms, suicide rates are still skyrocketing. And this is the suicide talk that I present all over the country now. I've probably done it 100 times in the last couple of years. That's what I'll be speaking on in Minneapolis, Minnesota, at the next reality conference coming up next month, early next month. It's in 2 weeks, I think, 3 weeks. Is the suicide stuff. The more we're teaching kids to turn inward, more money, sex, power, fame, influence on social media, these things as solutions, education. We're seeing the consequence of them. We're seeing the things that we're trying to solve rise, like suicide. And it's just not working. So I'm wondering when we're going to change course. But anyways, becoming dependent on sex work and stuff. Harmony, thanks for posting these links. There's tons of links for this one, because you know what, guys, like when we're talking about this, I don't want you to think that I don't want to just be another conservative talking head. That's my concern, to be honest with you, because that's not who I am. If I'm being honest, I don't have a political home, and politics isn't my main concern. Ethics and cultural apologetics, and of course the Christian worldview, and making a case for Christ, and these things, the gospel is my main concern. So I don't want you guys to think that I'm just a conservative talking head. I'm basing my opinions here on actually not just reading the articles. I've read the curriculum, and then I read some articles, and I read them from across the board, by the way, Daily Wire all the way to Ventura County Star. And they're ideologically, they're on two opposite ends. Well, the Ventura County Star is probably a little bit closer to the middle, but still, it's not. It's definitely not. So, anyways, honestly, it's like postmodern Sharia law. Well, yeah, they would have those against the system be as demas or second class citizens. Yeah, well, that's totally true. I think you might be shifting it a little harshly towards Sharia, but certainly there's something to be said about standing up for truth. It's crazy, actually, because if you look at the views on these videos that I'm doing on To The Point, you can tell. Harmony and I just talked about this briefly, kind of in passing, but you can tell that certain platforms, including YouTube and Facebook, they're downplaying these videos, and I'm not getting many views because of the topic matter, and my position of them. And so there's consequences to our views, and right now that's why I, and it's not just me, Greg as well, and Greg last year, by the way, just so you know, if you go look at the archives, which you should do, and read all of the Solid Ground articles. If you guys don't receive Solid Ground, you should. Fantastic free resource from Stand to Reason. You go to standtoreason.org, and there's a place on there somewhere to sign up for a Solid Ground. It's a quarterly article. They're lengthy articles. I think it's like a couple thousand words. So they're like short chapters of a book almost, where Greg dives into a culturally relevant issue pretty in depth. Last year, every single one of those Solid Grounds, I think, almost every single one, all four, were on totalitarianism and the threat of it, because it's a real threat. This isn't. I don't think it's just a boogeyman. I think then this is part of it. Like, it's like you either get on this train or get off. And this is the way we're going. And these are radical views. Some of them, teaching our children that they should be altering their biological bodies, and not their minds. Like, so they're teaching these kids in 7th grade. This is fact. They're teaching these kids that it's acceptable to have a double mastectomy, and have a surgery that creates a penis if you're a girl because you feel like a boy. And this is harmful. And what's interesting is I just read an article, I forget from where. It wasn't a conservative site, but it was the administration, the current administration, the presidential administration right now is actually pursuing research into the harm, the psychological and physical harm of gender realignment surgeries, while at the same time supporting young ones, kids, to go get the surgeries. There's a disconnect here. And it's because there's something else going on. Anyways, that gets us off topic. But totalitarianism are real, and so is the threat. Hey, Matt, it's good to see you, man. The obsession by some school districts on sex is definitely reflected on students' overall performance in math, science. Scores in both nationally dropped. So this is something actually I had in my notes, and I just didn't get to because I was running low on time. Like, how is the public school doing at what it's supposed to be doing? And this goes into that second question. What's the role of the government schools in the lives of our children and our own lives? And if it's to be helping them become ultimately productive, healthy members of society, I don't think that I think they're failing, and failing miserably. And we see that in things like where we compare, aptitude tests. I'm not a huge test guy anyway, but like when we see performances, I mean, reading levels of our students are declining, because but yet we're pushing these types of things, this sex ed. I'd rather have us, why aren't we investing the money that we're investing in sexual education of our youth? Why aren't we investing that instead in math and science and literature, and pursuing these things that'll actually benefit the kids? It's because there's something else going on. We've jettisoned truth for an ideology, and that's what's being pushed on our students. And our students are victims. Our kids are the victims, guys. You and me, most of the people who are watching this right now, we're grown. I am a product of public schools, and that's actually the response I get from a lot of my. I have a lot of friends who are Christian, but I wouldn't categorize them as conservative. They're Christian and kind of trying to figure it out, right? A lot of people. And when we talk about schooling, the response I get is I say I'm not going to send my kid to a public school. I'm going to do whatever it takes. If that means me taking on a second job or a third job in order to support my family, so my kid, and I live in Southern California, guys. It's really expensive here. Things aren't getting cheaper for us, but we're making certain sacrifices because our kids are worth it. So I'm doing whatever I can. And these people's response is, well, I'm a product of public school. Yeah, but it's not the same public school. It's different. I mean, I think you can trace it. It started back then. I mean, at my school, we had Gay Straight Alliance. It was a Gay Straight Alliance club, but my parents, actually, my dad opted me out of the health classes in high school. I don't know if it was necessary for this reason, but I never took health in high school, because I think my parents probably thought that that's their responsibility to teach me about this kind of stuff. And that's our responsibility as parents to educate our kids. And like I said, there was a short statement that I mentioned, the role of the public education, the role of public schools is to come alongside parents. That's firmly my opinion. I think that our goal as parents is to educate our kids. The public school should be a tool that is available to us to assist us in that. But that's not what's happening. And part of that is largely due to our own fault. I mean, we have to own it when we mess up. I think that we've given too much responsibility over. We've become too complacent. My generation and the generations after me, I think, are failing at this. But just because I'm a product of the public school, this is my point that I'm going to get back to from just a minute ago, doesn't mean that the public schools are producing the same things anymore. They haven't. They've gone significantly off the rails. Let's see here. Let's see. Isaac, thanks for the resources articles. I believe 2 of them were dead links, though. Oh, bummer. They might have just gotten cut off or something like that. But also, like if you look at the beginning of the link and you figure out the source and kind of Google the topic, you'll see them. Um, yeah, you can search for the Daily Wire online. Now, I'm gonna say it up front, guys. Just be careful. Like read every perspective. The Daily Wire, you all know, is going to be conservative. For most of us who are watching this right now, we're going to read that and say amen to it, right? Read the CNN articles, read MSNBC articles as well, and but more important than all of this, read if there's a document, or like in this case the Teen Talk curriculum, read that for yourself. It's 429 pages. Now a lot of those pages are pictures. Careful. A lot of those pages are kind of activities for the kids to do, and look at those. But so just so I'm saying that because it's not necessarily 429 full pages of text. I didn't read 429 full pages of text for this conversation that we're having. I flew through it. I saw the headings. I pulled out what I thought was really important, what was kind of controversial, and it was a lot. It wasn't just like I'm not highlighting a minor portion of this curriculum. The whole first half of it is, in my opinion, highly controversial. So yeah, but you can search these sources and find these things. Let's see here. Hey Tom, thank you, man. You guys are the ones that make, number one, this possible. You guys, by giving the Stand to Reason and supporting me, is amazing. Thank you for tuning in and listening. A question, okay, Isaac. Let's see here. Question: how would you deal with the notion uh, there's a difference between sex and gender? I think that this is I saw a talk with Jordan Peterson recently where he actually, and I haven't gotten there because I haven't wrapped my mind around it. I'm not as smart as Jordan Peterson, but he makes the point that gender is now a completely useless term in our culture. It's completely useless. Um, but the idea that biological sex and gender conflict, I just I don't dismiss. I deny that. Like, I understand that. So biological sex and one's gender might be different in that, but they're both on a binary. Like, the terms might mean different things. Biological sex has mainly to do with your biology. Gender has to do more with um roles and things that we play, and gender is, a male or female. Like you either have a male part or you don't, right? Vast majority of people. Where gender, maleness, can look a different way according to a culture and a society. Now, I'm not saying it's fluid, that males can be females and females can become males. I know if you guys have watched any of my stuff on this or read any of my articles, you clearly know where I stand on this. But your gender expression is a little bit different. I mean, and you have effeminate men, you have masculine women, you have boys that don't like to play with trucks and in the dirt, and they would rather play with dolls. But that doesn't mean that they're a woman. You see, so that's the difference between sex and gender. I think that there is a difference, but between the terms. But that doesn't mean that it's not a binary system in both situations. I hope that makes sense. Right. I hope that makes sense. And by no means an expert on this. Alan Schliemann has written a ton on this. I recommend that you go to him in his blog articles and his videos online on this stuff. I think he might have done an STR University. Speaking of, there's an STR University that's about ready to launch, if it hasn't already, on abortion. That's actually Alan. He does it, Making Abortion Unthinkable. It's going to be a multi-part course, multi-class course that you want to make sure you get involved with. It's totally free. Just go to the website, str.org, click on training, or actually now I think you can just click on there's a little icon right on that homepage, STRU, boom, you make an account. There's no charge. You don't get solicited. You just log in, and then you can participate in the classes. But there's the newest one, which just got launched. So I hope that answers your question, Isaac. There is a difference in meaning. When I say sex, it means biological sex. Gender, I think, relates more to the expression of your gender. Both are still a binary system. Just because a male expresses his gender maybe a little bit more effeminately, than what is the societal norm. And these are things that we as Christians and conservatives and everything like this can be better at expressing, by the way. You know, we can be more sympathetic, I guess. So anyways, I hope that answers your question. It doesn't change just because somebody expresses themselves, their gender in a different way doesn't make them not their sex, their biological sex. That's why I wanted to finish that sentence. Let's see here. Does Planned Parenthood have a hand in this curriculum? This resembles their rhetoric. I don't know. That's a good question. I didn't see them other than listed as a resource. I didn't see them have their hand in it. It wouldn't surprise me at all. I know that our public school system here in my area, we contract out the teaching of these types of things, and oftentimes that's contracted out to Planned Parenthood. But I don't know about the Teen Talk curriculum in particular. I know, and also I know that the school board for 2 or 3 years, I think maybe 4, was reviewing multiple different curriculums, and this is the one that they landed on. So maybe they were reviewing a Planned Parenthood one and didn't choose it. But anyway, so I'm not sure. That's a good question, though. Let's see here. Unbiased is practiced as non-judgmental. That's interpreted by students as a positive claim that sexual deviance is morally neutral. Absolutely. What the words we use matter. And notice when you oh man, so in the news recently, the president has sat down with a transgender. It was a man dressed like a woman. It was so that makes him a transgender woman, right? And the transgender woman, he said, notice the terms that people use. The terms that people use matter. Gender inclusive health, or something like this. Gender inclusive health. And he asked the president if the president was in favor or not in favor of gender inclusive health. I think that's the term he used. And notice how they use the word inclusive, and it's rigged. The language is rigged, and they're saying inclusive because nobody wants to be exclusive, right? No, so the opposite of that is gender exclusive. And oh my gosh, you don't like these people, you're exclusive. And it's purposeful. You know, the rhetoric is strong and it's deep, and these words matter. And so when things are phrased, we see it even in the abortion discussion, right? Pro-life, pro-choice. You know, those terms aren't really descriptive of our positions, I don't think. You know, I mean, everybody's pro-life and everybody's pro-choice. You know, it's pro-abortion or anti-abortion. Like, I don't understand. You know, this is where we should be. But the rhetoric shifts in ways here. So how they choose to unbiased or non-judgmental, right? Unbiased doesn't mean non-judgmental. Unbiased means that not in this sense, at least. Unbiased means that you're just reporting news. This is how news used to be reported. It used to just be the news. It's great. Actually, on my car, I have like, it's one of those, it's not a satellite thing. I listen to an internet-based news program by the Associated Press, and they're 10-second, 30-second news bites, and they don't have time to spin it. So I really like it because it's literally just saying, hey, today, so-and-so was bombed. Boom. This many dead. This is where the rocket came from. No political stuff, or, you know, then they report on everything from cooking news to global news. And I like that because the rhetoric is gone. It's unbiased. It's devoid of an opinion. It's not trying to prove a point. It's just reporting on the facts. And that's, I mean, but it's not the same as non-judgmental now. I think non-judgmental is now an ethical term that we should all be well, we all judge, every one of us. It's impossible. And we're all exclusive, by the way. Every worldview is exclusive in that it excludes anything that disagrees with it. So anyways, these terms matter. I hope that made sense, guys. Let's see here. I'm going to scroll through. In Washington State, Planned Parenthood has their hand in the major curriculum, Flash. That's in most of the school districts, and they push the law to teach comprehensive. Yeah. Well, Planned Parenthood has a ton of money, guys, and they're also in bed with the state. So it's of course they're getting involved. And that's why it's important that we speak up and into these things. That's why we do it. Let's see here. Sign up for here's a link, guys, that you can sign up for those solid grounds. Make sure that you do that. They're really good resources that are free, and you get Greg's thoughts on these issues, and they're really, really good. Like they're really good articles. Um, and then let's see here. I'm gonna scroll. Angela here. Thanks for tuning in, Angela, by the way. What ongoing conversations would you have with your kids to offset the indoctrination tactics that happen throughout their day in public schools? How often would you purposely have those conversations? Because it seems we wouldn't want to. Yes, that's a wow, Angela, you are a good mom. Yes, asking these questions, right? So with my kids, and granted they're in private school, but still they're exposed to the world. And also, I hate to say it, guys, but in private school, just because my kids go to a small private school doesn't mean Christian private school doesn't mean that every kid in the classroom is Christian. So there's other ideas that are floating around, especially on the ball field or during recess or lunch or whatnot. Um, I listen a ton, and I don't always feel the need to respond. I ask a lot of questions. So, hey, what did you think about this? Now, there are times that, I'm probably like, I'm probably not the best example of this because my kids, I just the other day, my oldest daughter, who's 12, asked me and my wife the question, why do we always have to critique everything, mom? Why do we always have to, like, whenever we watch a movie together as a family, you know, I'm pointing stuff out as best as I can. And so is my wife to the kids. Hey, did you see that? Like, gosh, they just turned something on. I can't remember. It was a Netflix show that they were watching over a friend's house that have literal kids than ours. So, and they're a good family. So we just kind of assumed, hey, you know what? They've watched this. Let's let our kids watch this. And we're watching it. And one of the lines was something to the effect that we don't live by truth. Oh, it's something in the woods. In the woods, it's not truth that matters, but our feelings, is what one of the main characters said. And that's a great opportunity to have a conversation, right? So when there's these big boom ideas, I bring it up. And it's not always right away. Sometimes I'll wait, and in the car ride to school, I'll say, "Hey, do you last night I just have a question. Like, did you hear this line? What do you think that means?" So I'll ask open-ended questions to them instead of me just trying to teach it, and then I'll offer corrections and stuff like this. Um, but yeah, you don't want to do it all the time. But we're very, very selective uh, on what we let our kids watch. Most of the time, I'd say 80% of the time, we preview the stuff for our kids, and we're producing sheltered kids. I'm sorry. I mean, I know that we are, but that's kind of my job, is to protect my kids and shelter them. They're going to have plenty of time. Sometimes the argument, and you're welcome to this opinion, but sometimes the argument is like, well, let them live out in the world and have experiences. My kids are going to have a lifetime of experiences. I'm trying to save them from a lot of the experiences that I had, in honesty, because they didn't do any good. I want to teach them how to think about these things, how to process stuff, how to think critically, not what to think. I mean, I'm teaching them what to think, but under that is how to think, so that they can then process these things. So in asking the questions, I'm hoping them teaching them, wait, maybe I should be asking questions. And this is a conversation we had with my daughter the other night when she brought up the objection. How can we always have to be like talking about this stuff? Just said to her, because I want you to know the spiritual reality of the world. I want you to have discerning eyes and be able to uh, see this stuff and then draw it out yourself. And so that's what we do. So I have these conversations regularly with my kids when things get brought up. um, every Sunday they sit in church with us, so they get worldview training at church with us. We talk about the sermons through their homeschool curriculum and through their school curriculum. There's worldview. If you want a really great curriculum that you can buy, Elizabeth Elizabeth Urbanowitz. Oh man, I'm gonna try to. I never do this. If I lose you, I'm sorry, but Elizabeth, I never look stuff up. Urbanowitz, while I'm online with you guys, because I think it's tacky. But this is okay. So watch this. I'm even gonna add this link in myself. Hopefully, Harmony. If I lose you guys, I'm so sorry. This curriculum here, this is solid gold. Like solid gold, guys. You should all buy this because she's incredible. This is Elizabeth Urbanowicz's Foundations, um, and she's the founder and president of this thing. It's called Foundations Worldview. Fantastic curriculum here if you want to have these type of conversations with your kids. It's a great resource to you. What ongoing conversations would I have? A lot having to do with the ongoing conversations I have are about gender stuff. This started early with my kids, and it happened because we were watching the Babysitters Club. My oldest daughter, sorry, Eva. Gosh, it's probably 4 years ago now, so she was probably 8, 9. She was reading the Babysitters Club books, which I mean, I remember my sister reading. Well, they're not the same Babysitters Club anymore, you know. I mean, well, the books are the same, but there's a show now on Netflix that came out. I don't know if they're still making new episodes, but we started watching it and they were really great. Good morals for the most part. I mean, not from a Christian worldview explicitly, but whatever, all truth is God's truth. And then came the episode where they had a transgender girl. So a boy that was a little boy, grade school boy, you know, maybe second grade, that was dressing as a girl. And that issue came up really early on, and so we've just kind of carried that through. And my kids, we've just taught them like girls are not boys and boys are not girls, and we teach them this stuff, and we teach them why, and we don't dull it down. By the way, it's we use the age appropriate, correct terminology. So that's one of the things that I'm having a constant conversation with my kids on. I always make sure I keep the lines of dialogue open. I'm constantly asking just open-ended questions to my kids. It's intentional. I use time in the car very purposefully, even if it's just the 15 or 10-minute ride to school. I'm trying to ask them about their life, how they're feeling, and stuff like this. So, and anything, of course, that they're seeing on media, I just ask them about it. What would you purposely having those conversations? Because, yeah, and I don't do it. I don't dig in deep all the time. It's mostly me just asking questions, listening, and then guiding occasionally when I think guidance is needed. I hope that helps. Man, I feel like I'm stumbling through this process, to be honest with you guys. Like raising kids is hard. I asked my mom recently. We all traveled last year to Maine for my younger sister's wedding, and my mother was up really late at night in the cabin. We were in a cabin, like my whole family together. It was awesome. And she was up really late. And we were the only ones up, and I asked, Mom, how come you didn't tell me marriage and raising kids was so hard? And she said, because I wanted you to get married and I wanted you to have kids. But it's stinking hard, man. So I feel like I'm stumbling, Angelo, just with you. Man, we're just on the kind of on the road together. So having a good time, hopefully doing it too. Let's see here. I'm just trying to see. I'm trying to see if there's any like explicit questions here. Let's see. I love that you guys are having conversations with each other. This is great. Like it's really great to see. And I do appreciate everybody kind of tuning in here. I'm gonna let's see here. None of this LGBT plus guys are neutral. Yeah, they don't want a fair discussion. It often ends with agree or take the hike, hence totalitarianism. Because this is now in the form of our government. That's where the ideology is now, and that's totalitarian. Exactly what you've described. And there's no such thing as neutrality. Neutrality is a myth. There's no neutrality out there, and we have to get ourselves used to this. There's no such thing as a neutral ground. You know, there's such a thing as being open to listening to people and dialogue about things and being open to changing your mind about stuff. But that doesn't mean you're meeting people where they're at or there's a neutral ground. That's neutrality is a myth, and there is no neutrality, especially when it comes to worldview stuff. You know, and then Francis Schaeffer pointed that out. Before him, Jesus pointed that out. So there is no neutrality. I mean, Jesus was very clear on this, you know. But yeah, and oftentimes people don't want a fair discussion, which is something that we can learn too, by the way, because there is a such thing as having a fair discussion, letting somebody speak, letting people be heard, listening intently. The key, people sometimes when I'm out speaking at churches or conferences, one of the questions sometimes I get is, is how do you engage in these types of conversations? And I always say the number one key to having a good conversation with somebody is actually be interested in what they're saying. Express a genuine interest in the person, in what they're saying, and ask great questions. That's the second point. Ask questions. And that's like where Columbo and tactics and stuff like that comes in. But the first part is to actually be interested in a person. Are you talking to somebody just so you can prove your point, or are you talking to somebody because you actually value what they say, even though you disagree? So it's important. So there is such thing as a fair discussion. There's no such thing as neutrality. Yeah, but that's good, Bo, man. It's good to see you. I appreciate you. I guess I'm not seeing you. Well, I'm seeing you in your picture and your comment, but I'm not like seeing you. It's good to have you here. Thank you. Let's see here. I love that you guys are going back for question. Here we go. Isaac. Yes. Nice picture here. Profile picture here. The chess piece. It's like a total stand the reason thing, man. I might try to search for that online and steal it. Of the 46 chromosomes of the human genome, 45 of them are unisex. Female and male infants are therefore similar in many physical traits and developmental milestones. I'm not sure in infancy. I'm not sure what the question is. Just because things are similar doesn't make them the same, right? Identically. Then just because things are similar doesn't make them identical. Just because we share an incredible amount of DNA with apes doesn't make us apes. You know what I mean? And I don't know what you're necessarily. Oh wait, I gotta keep reading. Sorry, brother Isaac, man. I'm so sorry about that. Would you respond to someone who believes this is be adequate evidence to push for trans? No, and that's the same. Even that one difference. What was it? That one chromosomal difference is what makes all the difference. Just because we share similar characteristics with something else doesn't make us that other thing, right? We are either male or female the vast majority of the time. And this is not controversial scientifically, by the way. So if in responding to this, I don't have the resources off the top of my mind. I wish I did, but there's oh man, what is his name? I've linked to him before in previous to the points, and in some of my talks, I discussed this gentleman. He's a biologist, microbiologist. He's an atheist. He's a naturalist, and he's really speaking up against the gender, this transgender stuff because he recognizes from a scientific perspective it's just not true. It's just not true. So just because we have that one difference does not that one difference proves that we're different or shows that we're different. And just because we're similar in a bunch of different ways doesn't make us the same. I'd actually ask I would reverse that. You're good, Isaac. I'd ask them, what of that one difference though? I mean, what of that one difference? Because it's that one difference. It's that one difference that makes it possible in 1,000 years to dig up that person, test their remains, and conclude that they're either male or female. It's that one difference. So that one difference, I'd say it this way, that one difference makes all the difference. That's what makes the difference. So and this is supported scientifically. And New Reformation, White and Isaac, that fails to show the effects of epigenetic markers. Yeah, this stuff now you're outside my pay grade on this stuff. But awesome, guys. You know what? I've been on for about an hour, so I'm gonna kind of get ready to sign off here. I appreciate your attention. I appreciate your putting up with me, and this was a longer one today as far as the commentary section up front, but I think it's important. And Christian, you got to take a stand. And this is a conversation I had with my wife last night. There's a cost, and I know that. And with your help and your support, and you watching us, and you supporting us through prayer, and whether you give to STR or whatever it is, just this support with your support is shows us that helps us take a stand. and there's a cost, and we're on the front lines of that, and you guys are on the front lines. So uh, we've got to take a stand. Now is the time. Things aren't getting easier. In the next generation, and Greg always says this, the next generation is the most important generation, and I agree with that. The most important generation is always the next generation. And my kids, 12, 10, 9, and 5, are going to have it, at least from an ideological standpoint, maybe not from a financial or something like that standpoint, but an ideological standpoint, are going to have it way more difficult than I do, and I have right now. So we're going to be training them up, but we also have to be willing to pay the price to press into the culture, and be ambassadors for Christ, begging on behalf of Christ to be reconciled to God. That's our mission. We're ambassadors for Christ, for anything else. So anyways, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate every one of you. I just want to make sure I get all the things I needed to get in. We're busy speaking all over the country. If you guys want to bring this type of material, or you want to do any one of my number of talks, please go to the str.org website, str.org. Go to training, and you can figure out how to contact STR and bring these presentations, these talks, these topics to your church. I'd love to do that with you. I'll be in Seattle, the Seattle area this weekend, teaching on, I do my atheist role play, Why I'm a Christian, which is I love that talk. It's one of my favorites. It's so much fun. It's basically my story, but bumping into reality, the things of reality, where everything came from, the moral depth, reality, and the existence of the soul. I'll be talking about biblical justice, which is a newer talk for me, and I'm really excited because that's where we got to go. And I'm doing one more. I can't remember. It's 4 talks. I'll be there, and it's on the STR calendar. I'll be in the Seattle area. If you're there, make sure you sign up for the conference I'm going to be at. It'd be great to see you. Make sure you say hi if you come. And with that, reality conference is in Minneapolis, Minnesota, in 2 weeks, I believe. If you're in that area, or you're within striking distance of the Minneapolis metropolitan area, you want to come to this. There's more than 2,500 tickets sold already. They're saying that there's going to be more than 3,000. The place holds 4, I think, maybe more. And it's going to be incredible. We're having a great time. This is our 3rd go at it for this season. That means we're at the midway point. We've got 3 more after the new year. We'll be in Dallas. We'll be in Augusta, Georgia. Well, it's North Augusta, so I think it's South Carolina technically, but Augusta, Georgia area. And we will be in the Philadelphia area. And if you can get to any one of these reality student apologetics conferences, make sure you go. You can check out the dates, the locations, and how to get there, and all the topics and everything at realityapologetics.com. And that's where you're going to go to register. You won't regret going. Nobody ever regrets going. It's a fantastic time. Again, though, if you go and you watch this, please stop me and say hello. Like, I really do want to meet you. And with that, guys, I think thanks, Harmony, as always. Oh yes, Harmony put this in the comments here. If you have any questions that didn't get answered here, or you have other questions that they'd like to ask to Amy Hall or Greg Kokel, STR Ask is a great place. You can add your comments even on Twitter and stuff at #STR Ask, and submit your questions that way. And with that, guys, it's a great pleasure to be serving Christ with you guys. I hope you stay well. I hope you stay contending for the faith, and I'm just grateful. So thank you guys so much. I'll see you guys in, I think, 2 weeks. All right. I'll talk to you then.